Good morning, beloved. Welcome back to the show on this Monday morning. Goodness, the winter has got its nails dug in deep. Mrs. W is chomping at the bit to get the garden in, and we're still frosting and freezing and snowing. It's hard to believe, but that's life up in the mountains. So while everyone's filing in, I thought we would start the day. Now, we did not have a very successful lantern landing yesterday because, as you guys know, I wussed out. When the lantern is full of fuel and it lights and then it goes out, then fills the chamber full, well, makes me nervous. So we've had plenty of time over the weekend for it to air out, and we will get things going here. Goodness, shout out to, I was very surprised this morning to wake up and to see in my feed two of the channels that I've followed for a long time. Both of them had done an expose, for lack of a better word, on one of my videos, one of my live streams, and that is my friend, or not my friend yet, but fellow Greenskin, Undead Chronic, as well as Hammerhand. So shout out to you guys. They were, I think they're new to my channel. They're just seeing my content, and they're noticing a lot of similarities between what they talk about and have talked about for years and what I'm sharing of late. And indeed, I have been following both those channels, and yeah. I think maybe there's a collaboration in the future we can get into, how the journey began. It all began different for a lot of us. One of the things for me, what I've realized is that I definitely am not nowhere near as flexible mentally as I used to be, meaning open to new ideas. Us old guys, we kind of get stuck in our ways, and we think and we gauge and judge the world according to how we knew it when we were coming up. And we have, I think, mistakenly, don't understand the plight and the difficulties of young men in this current time. And when we see them not thinking and doing this at the same time, this is a recipe for disaster. Let's focus on what we're doing here. 20 pumps. Of course, gentlemen, as we prepare for the struggle to come, we want to have these type of tools. Did I get here without my lighter? I'll be right back. These type of tools that our grandfathers were able to thrive with and be independent, having your energy sources, having ways to defend your home, having backup water, having backup electricity. All these old things are going to be coming into play. There's a lot of people that are slow to wake up to the decline of America. And that's because they're not seeing it. It's not affecting them personally. They're not seeing it home. But those of us, as we know, Proho is a student of history. And if we look at the fall, look at that. We're doing pretty good there. We didn't set anyone on fire. Uh-oh. Oh, goodness. Look at what I've done. Oh, goodness. My soul left my body. Good grief. Every single time. This thing is getting my goat. I've been lighting it for over 50 episodes, and it just gets worse. I'm going to put that over there where it can do the least. Look at it. It's on fire now. Yeah. I'm just going to shut that down. That's going to be a no-go 2 days in a row. Hopefully we'll have better luck next time. Those of us who are students of history can't help but realize there are a lot of parallels with the fall of the Roman Empire when we compare it to our own situation here. And I think, my friend Brian and I, we went on a really great dirt bike ride yesterday, had a good adventure, and we were sitting around the fire for a couple hours afterwards talking about this. He is a cultural warrior like myself and very well up on what is going on with the current situation, especially with young people. So we have a lot of really good conversations, and I trust his opinion on these things. And he's also very well read. And we were talking about maybe the reason why folks don't realize, or normies don't realize, the fall of Western civilization and how radically things are going to change in the coming decades is because it will happen on the peripheral at first. Just like Rome, as the German I can't remember of the German that was credited, the German barbarian that was credited with the ultimate fall of Rome, but they picked away at the periphery. So there were, and that's the same way here. We have a lot of interests, and we've done a lot of colonizing across the world, and these things are going to fail first, and they're going to be far away from home, and they're not necessarily going to affect you. It's not unlike the body when it tries to protect itself from freezing to death. What happens? You've all been in a cold environment before, right? What happens first? Your fingers get cold. Your hands, your toes get cold. And then what that is the body sacrificing the least important members so it can focus on controlling and saving the core, which is the essential, the organs. That's why frostbite starts on the peripherals, starts on your fingertips, on your ears, as the blood and the heat is being conserved to the inside. And that's what we can expect to see as all of these programs that we've had. I wonder even maybe some of these foreign bases, we have a ridiculous amount of foreign bases all overseas that most people don't even know about, hundreds of them that we are paying for. When the money starts to run out, I wonder if these aren't the first things that are going to happen. And once we lose that foothold in those foreign places and our enemies increase, well, things are going to get bad. So we take a lot of heat, kind of being early adopters of this. I've been talking about this sort of thing for 10 years, about getting your family prepared, getting yourself prepared, getting yourself a piece of land and remove from these urban areas, from these people who just will not see and cannot see and will not see until the barbarian is essentially kicking their door in. You're never going to be able to convince them. If you don't know what's going on at this time, if you can't see the writing on the wall, if you can't see how perilous the future is, and you're doing nothing to prepare for it, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. Goodness. All right, what else was there? Something else I wanted to talk about. What can we expect to see? That's the thing that always comes up. How do we forecast this? How do we prepare our families for what is coming? And what does that mean? It's very difficult to forecast, and all I can do is kind of go off of what I know is I know human nature doesn't change very much. How I know that is we can go back and we can read from the patriarchs, our grandfathers in the Old Testament. We can see the problems that they suffered back then, we still suffer with today. Relationships. Solomon wrote, it's better to spend your day on the top or the corner of a roof in peace than in a palace with a quarrelsome and contentious woman. So we can see that, sometimes we get disappointed or we get a little bit frustrated thinking that what we're experiencing and the difficulties that we have to deal with are something that's new to mankind. And that is the only way you could ever see that is if you don't read history, because if you do, you realize that what we are experiencing is a common problem and has always been so with men. So how do we read the future? How do we prepare for the future? What Brian and I were talking about the other night is that a lot of us men have been complaining about for a long time, and what I hear from so many of you guys is I can't find a tribe. I can't find like-minded people. And sometimes you think you're the only one out there, that, so I'm collecting ammunition, I'm training, I'm moving out of the city, I'm pulling my kids out of public school, I'm educating myself, but I'm the only one out here. Am I crazy? How is it that no one else can see this? What I think is going to happen is that, one thing we have to remember, it's really easy to point a bullseye on our politicians, that they're in charge of everything and they're wrecking everything and it's all their fault and we don't have anything to do with that. And the more I look at that, the more I think about that, especially when I look at this and try to contrast it with what has taken place in the past. When the Almighty wanted to make changes in society, when a country or a tribe just went too far and it needed to be corrected, and when they just simply wouldn't listen to him, they wouldn't listen to his prophets, they wouldn't listen to his teachers, they wouldn't listen to the men that he sent, and just the opposite, the men oftentimes that he sent to warn them of a forthcoming or coming judgment, they mistreated and they abused, and sometimes they even killed the very prophets that were sent out to warn them. And and that is what you're seeing right here. You have men and women that are standing up, that are raising the alarm on the societal problems that we have today, and they're the ones that are getting canceled. They're the ones that are being demonized, villainized, even though the message that they have, the truth that they have, is actually the only thing that could save us from the ultimate destruction that is coming down the road. So don't be surprised if you're maligned. Don't be surprised if you're canceled and you're hated and your friends and family won't see it, because most people are not going to see it. So in a case like that, when God tries to reason with people by sending their own to warn them, hey, something bad is coming and we need to change our ways, what we're doing here is just not going to benefit our community, and our children are going to we're going to suffer for this. Our children are going to pay for everything that we've done. Well, if it gets to the point where they won't hear you, then God will bring in someone else. He'll bring in someone else, just like he had to chastise the children of Israel back in the day. When they wouldn't listen to the prophets, who did he raise? Well, he raised up Nebuchadnezzar. And he came and he took them into captivity. And he uses these powers, these men, even outside your own country and your own tribe, to chastise or discipline the ones he loves the most. And those of us who are men who have been complaining for a long time about not having a tribe, not having an opportunity to be around like-minded men, anytime we want to start any type of an organization, if you wanted to start a gym that was male only, you wouldn't be able to do it. If you wanted to start a clubhouse where you played pool and drank scotch and smoked cigars or whatever with your friends, you couldn't do it. Women would have to infiltrate that. And so it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. What I think we have to remember is that the country has gone off the rails. What's important to us as Americans, we've lost track, we've lost sight of things, and we're simply focused on consumerism, focused on bigger and better and faster, and where we're going is ultimately leading us away from God. We have to remember, when we start criticizing these foreign leaders, we may be fighting against God, who's trying to create an environment that we actually want. And what I mean by that is, when he needs things to happen, he'll use outside sources to bring people together. And and one thing that seems to be happening, at least in my area, and from just kind of trying to feel what's going on, is that people are kind of shrinking down, and they're weeding out the people in their lives that are not necessarily important, that may have been peripheral friends, that may have been opposed to your belief system, but you'd had a friendship with them for a long time, and you could kind of avoid religion and politics and get together, and everyone could maintain these friendships, and you would associate with these people altogether. What happened, and what really changed that for a lot of us, of course, was what side people took in the whole COVID debacle. And we saw our friends and family members, how quickly they turned upon us. We had friends that actually said publicly, when they became aware of our personal choice and how we fell on the whole thing, that they would be willing to go so far treating or dealing with people like us that would not comply, as to forcibly making us take these jabs, these vaccinations. These were people that we had formerly considered to be friends. Now, once you experience something like that, once you see a person's true character and true nature, then you really start to reevaluate your life, and you start to realize, well, maybe I need to focus on the people that didn't abandon me. Maybe I need to cut some things out of my life. My granddad used to say something. He said, do you know how you really can find out what a man's character is? Regardless of what he says and all of the bravado and all of the posturing that he does. Because guys talk a lot of trash. You hear it all the time. And talk is cheap. It's easy to say things. Granddad said, all you've got to do, you can find out in about 24 hours what type of guy you have. Very simple. You take him elk hunting. Take him elk hunting, and the type of elk hunting that we did was pretty difficult. So you would show up there Friday night because you didn't have a lot of time, because you're a working guy and you maybe had 2-3 weeks of vacation and you're not going to take it all. So you drive all night after working all day on Friday so you can hunt Saturday morning. So you're already tired and stressed. And if you're in a group, that when guys get tired, that's when and frustrated, that's when the true character comes out, right? Well, then you're setting up a tent in the middle of the night. You know, sometimes it's 0 degrees or 10 below zero, and you've got to go out and you got to cut ridge poles, and you got to do the guidelines, and you got to get the wood stove unpacked. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and basically you're going to get no sleep for 24 hours because you got to be out there hunting, right? Well, you'll still see immediately when you put people in this stressful situation, do they start shirking duties? Do they start taking the easy route? Do they say one thing and do another? And you find out really quickly who your man is. I had a personal experience with that. We found out also another way who your man was by when I was really involved in rock climbing. I took a year and a half off with my best friend back when I was in my early 20s or so. We traveled all over the country and out of a bus and went to rock climbed the big spots all over the country, big wall climbing. You know, we did like Yosemite, we did Smith Rocks and Joshua Tree and Leavenworth, Washington, you know, and all the big spots and do that. So in our travels, we would always meet guys and we would talk to them and they would tell them what we were doing and how we were rock climbing and having all this good time, and they always wanted to go. So we had lots of gear, so we would always invite them. Yeah, come on up. We'll bring you in, we'll rope you up, show you a few things. Well, you would immediately find out your man. The guy would be talking all this trash about how he'd done all these things and how brave and how much courage he had. But you get him up on about the second pitch, I'd say about 60, 65 feet or so, and that's when you'll find out what you have. And in my experience, about 3/4 of them asked to be brought down, and they were done with the rock climbing. So, you know, you find out a lot about a guy when he's stressed. And that's what we saw with the whole COVID thing. There was a lot of folks that were able to keep a facade on, and once they were stressed, and then once they were really concerned, and a lot of people were concerned and worried about this. I'm not blaming anyone for that. We all overreacted to a certain extent because we were only reacting with the information that we had. But what we quickly saw was those of us who are critical thinkers, that are not just sheep, that are willing to follow the narrative, that don't just have an absolute trust for the government, you know, a couple months into it, we started to realize, well, you know, this seems a little bit fishy to me, and then our eyes were open to the big picture. So to try to tie all this together, you know, I'm kind of ranting and rambling right here, is that something that I have seen in the comments that just started maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that I've never seen before would be this. I can post a picture of something. I try to put up thought-provoking pictures on the feed from time to time so that you can look at this. You know, a picture is worth 1,000 words, whatever it may be, whether it be LeBron James wearing a skirt or funny memes, that sort of thing. And what I'd never heard before, because when you see a picture, you know, you pretty much, that's a mic drop. Like that happened. It's video, that's picture. That's obviously true, and it's hard to argue that. Now with the introduction of AI and the ability for computers to replicate folks' voices, to do the deep fakes, all this sort of thing. Now the comments are full of, whenever you post something like that, oh, that's just AI. You know, stop spreading lies. You know, that's not true. It's an automatically, for people that are in opposition to your belief system, in the past where that was resounding proof and truth, now they can just disregard it. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to contemplate it. They can just dismiss it by, oh, that's just AI. That's just, that's not true. That's a deep fake. And further polarizing and causing a separation. America, I think, has been the ability why we've been able to be infiltrated and abused and taken advantage of so much is because we've been one of the very few high trust societies. What I mean by that, if you go to the old country, now if we're talking about America, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, but if you go to the old country where Italy and such, that is not a high trust environment. People are not leaving things unlocked. Just look at the way they build their houses. Look at the bars and the gates and the locks. You can see that there's a lot of essentially a low trust society. Where America, I mean, there are still places even a few years ago, maybe they still are today, where people bragged about, yeah, I don't even lock my doors, or I leave my keys in my car. You know, that is a high trust society. So what the interlopers, or those who have infiltrated and have an agenda to tear down this great country and debase and degrade the great people in this country, is to take advantage of that high trust. And it took us a while to catch up. It took us a while to get punched in the nose a few times and wake up and realize, oh, maybe maybe not everyone is the same as us. Maybe not everyone sees things the way that we do. So it's sad to see. I hate to be that. I hate to have to be a person that is always looking over their shoulder, or always suspicious. I've always give people the benefit of the doubt. Always thought that they had the best motives, but now we can see that the mask is off, and the world is not a nice, kind place, not the nice, kind place that we thought it to be. And with this AI and being people moving from high trust to low trust, what that's going to do is I think it's really going to foster tribes. And what I mean by tribes is your community. You're going to get to the point, I'm going to get to the point, more so in the future, where because everything is going to be manipulated and everything we see is going to be sus, because we won't know if it's deep fake, if it's a real picture, whatever. You're just going to have a blanket opinion that, well, I can't trust it. I can't trust anything that I hear, and I could probably trust maybe half of what I see and maybe none of what I see. And what that's going to cause us to do, how I see it, is it's going to make us we're going to be building tribes. We're going to be getting back to friendships, relationships, depending upon one another in our communities locally, way more so than we ever have in the past, because it's the only thing that you know. I know what my neighbor tells me to be true because I can see it, what he's doing. I talk to him. I'm in his house. I can verify it. I can see it with my own eyes. I can smell it. You know, the whole deal. So I'm trying to tie this all together. Don't be hopeless about the situation. Don't think that you want to check out or delete yourself or just completely give up because there's no hope. Where we want to give up, beloved, is we want to give up contributing to the system. I think from this day forward, the way that you ought to look at your situation as a fellow pro-ho, if you're here, you're most likely like-minded, is that you are essentially living behind enemy lines. And that for you to contribute in, whether it be, this is just my opinion, in voting or getting excited about political issues or political parties or thinking if we could just get our guy in, whatever that may, I think you need to realize that even participating in a small way is going against what we're kind of about here. You really need to look at it and understand that the folks that are sitting in Olympia, you know, my state, or the folks that are supposedly our representatives that are sitting in Washington that you think are our representatives, they're not our representatives. They're not representing us anymore. They're representing special interests. They're representing lobbyists. And to just to participate in that, just the voting alone is just not productive anymore unless something radically changes. The only thing that we can really affect, what I can affect, is my environment, what I have right here, my relationships with my neighbors, building that with my friends. You know, I had one of the best days I ever had yesterday. It was all day stepping away from social media. It was just a delightful day where 3 friends, like-minded friends, went out into the woods and had a purpose. You know, our purpose is we realize that one of the most important things that we can do is to be able to know our community, know the area. We should know every single road where everywhere goes, to know your backyard, to have an advantage, to focus your time and efforts on what you can affect, and that is affect change in your local area. Let's jump into Super Chats. I'm ranting here. All right, shall we jump into this? I do have to cut out, just a quick warning, I do have to cut out a few minutes early today, probably around 2 or so. So somebody can give me a reminder around 2, and then I've got an appointment. So we'll still have plenty of time here. We have a super chat from our friend Evan Dixon, Radio's Made Easy. Now, Evan, kind of a quick update on that. Evan, I'm going to be trying to call you today, this afternoon, to coordinate this. So Evan is stepping up, and he's going to put together, with the help of sorry, I'm dead. I'm co-opting all of your terms here. They're just so appropriate that it's hard not to use them. The middleman and I and Evan are working on this radio package that we can put things together. Now, some of you, we were talking about different radio options and whether we wanted to go with the Bofang or a better option. A couple of you reached out and told me that there might be a lot of different rules and regulations about using types of radios, and there's a bunch of federal stuff that I don't understand. So we'll probably, we talk about, I was talking about would encryption be an option versus non-encryption. I don't know enough about it to get into that. And I think that it just becomes too complex. So I think we should just stick with what we know, stick with what is commonly available, stick with what guys can order, have, or most likely already have in their preps, and just kind of build upon that. So I'll have an update for you on that tomorrow. But Evan is going to be working with us on that. He's going to be doing the programming. So this is going to be super cool. So if you're not like a really techie type of person, you'll be able to get the radio package. He'll program it for your area, and then you'll be able to listen in on what's going on. Listen in on emergency services, etc. But he writes, refusing to mask and jab had a high social cost to our family. We have a well-developed no muscle now thought. Yeah, and it did to us as well, and especially for me, because I was quite outspoken. One thing I forget is that I still, when we're talking on this live stream, when we're being candid and discussing real problems for what's going on, the real things that we're facing, what I sometimes lose sight of is how many people are watching, and not everyone is a supporter. Some people are watching and hate watching stuff, and we experienced a lot of that, probably a lot more than you, because I was very public in my disagreement and the foolishness, I thought, of these mandates and how I felt about these things. And well, there were a lot of my neighbors in my community that had a very different outlook on that. And so that really put a target upon us. We lost a lot of friends. We lost a lot of, that strained a lot of relationships for us locally. But we also, when the dust eventually settled, it was the best thing that ever happened, because what we found was who was true blue, who our people were, who were our tribe members that were willing to put everything on the line and willing to take that social shaming to follow what they knew to be true. So, for that reason, that's probably was the best thing that could ever happen. Now that shook out all of the folks that were potentially dangerous to us. We saw, it was amazing to me. Mrs. W and I were talking about that this morning. Like, there were actually friends that were in our inner circle that we would have trusted, that we would have, probably shared intimate details about particular things, thinking that it would have been safe, that we found out that they turned on us immediately and even made efforts to try to get us in trouble, to try to get my channel taken down, as I said, to try to get our children, I don't need to go into details, but we've had, problems with CPS. For folks that have tried to attack us from that way. It's hard to believe that there's that sort of evil in the world. And that's whenever you stand for what is right, whenever you stand for the truth, you're going to bring that type of heat upon you. But I don't worry about it. When you're clothed in the armor of God, every evil intent of man formed against us, it will not prosper. If God has ordained this mission, God has ordained this ministry for us to move forward and to reach people and to get the message out to folks that are struggling in depression and hopelessness, that it's not hopeless, that these things needed to take place. This separation needed to be made so that we could see who the true warriors were, who are the true soldiers for the army of God. So We have to look at it as the blessing it is, as hard as that is to do. But if it brings us to tribes, if it brings us back our fellow people, and that we can build friendships, tight friendships that are of like-minded people, that this helped us to expose the interlopers, then I count it all as a great success. And that's the way we need to look at it. We have to remember, beloved, that once you realize that you're operating behind enemy lines, so to speak, this is just a figure of speech, of course. I don't advocate violence here. Our battle, our struggle is a spiritual struggle. We fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. But once we wake up to this and accept this and see this, well, this is somewhat kind of encouraging. Now we know what we need to do. Now we need to find like-minded people. We need to reach like-minded people. We need to share this truth, and especially to the young people. One thing that I think it was Chronic brought up the point where he made the point that he was surprised that it was very unusual for someone of my age. He called me a based boomer. I'm not a boomer, actually, but I get it. It's unusual for a based boomer to understand the plight of our younger brothers here that are actually trying to find suitable women, and that we can take the, kind of the Dave Ramsey mindset of, well, you just need to work harder. You just need to get another job. You just need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And I'll admit that that's the way that I was raised. That I drank all that Kool-Aid as well. I thought that was the way that it was. And I have worked hard to get to where I'm at. I have had to pull myself up. Nobody gave me anything to get where I'm at. My wife and I, I'm not going to take credit for this. My wife and I, almost 20 years ago decided we didn't want to have the state involved in our business. We didn't want to put our kids in public school. We didn't want our kids being raised in an environment that was rapidly changing in an urban area. And we wanted to if we made the decision to have children, to raise a family, we looked at it that it was our job to provide for them and to educate them and to train them up according to our values. And the only way for us to do that was to get them, to remove them from the situation that we were in, and that was in an urban environment. We made that decision to do that. We have a super chat from the Gnostic Academy, 777. Shout out to you. Welcome, brother. Thank you for your support. He says, we can never lose hope. If we don't have faith, hope, and charity, we are doing a huge disservice to God Almighty. Great talk. Yeah, I agree. One thing that my buddy Brian and I, we have a lot of discussions about this, and being able to bounce questions off of him. I trust him implicitly. He's one of my best friends, and he's very wise, and he's very well read, and he offers a lot to me. A lot of these questions and topics that come up on the stream here, him and I have long discussions about next to the fireplace, after rides. And the question that we were really struggling with is how long can I maintain this? How long can we maintain this anxiety, this fight or flight attitude that we've been in since the initial lockdowns? That scared a lot of us, especially those of us who have families. My kids are so spread apart. I do have concerns. I do feel it's my obligation. It's very different than our boomer parents, where they spent everything and are spending everything on themselves. Mrs. W and I think that one of the important things that we need to do before we pass on is to make sure that we leave something for our children, that we give them every advantage to get started. And when I survey the future, and I look at the difficulties for my son, who's 18, and what he's going to have to overcome, that makes me, I can make a choice to try to slow things down and to provide comfort for my retirement. I don't have to, I could easily get myself in a position that I don't have to work anymore. I could go ride my dirt bikes and my moto and just sail out into the sunset. I'm living in the place I want to live. I created the life that I want to live, and it's comfortable, and I can continue to do that now, regardless of all of this. But I would never be able to live with that, because I have an obligation to launch my kids and to get them set up as well. I have anxiety about what they're going to face and the difficulties that they're going to have to endure. And I feel like if I can do something about it, And I'm not in the ground yet. I still have a platform, and I still have energy, and I still have resources that I want to get them set up. And I want to bring everyone else along as well. I want to get you guys awake to the fact that you're in a dangerous situation if you're in these urban areas. And if you want to raise a traditional Christian family, if you want a higher probability of being able to find someone that's like-minded as a mate, it's not going to happen in these urban areas. And to get out. Get out. But to tie in what the point about being more flexible, being able to see the plight of our younger brothers and what they're going through, yes, watching Jack and the anxiety that comes from what he's going to have to deal with in life, it does bother me. And yes, my main obligation is to him and to prepare him and to have something for him, an inheritance for him, so he can at least get going. But I also feel an obligation to provide that to you guys as well. You know, we're in this together. We have, thank you, Gnostic Academy. Yeah, that was a very good point, very thoughtful. Mr. Overton has a comment. Did my first stream on Rumble yesterday, and it was great. So free, you would consider doing an airsoft stream on Rumble. So free, would you consider doing an airsoft stream on Rumble? Yes. Yes, I would be happy to do that. I'll even be a guest on your channel, Overton, if you want to. Just tell me how to do it. I'm a little bit of a Luddite with this sort of thing. Me running this live stream by myself here, I'm operating at the absolute limits of my abilities. So if I have to start doing stream link keys and that sort of thing, it's going to be trouble. But if you can make it simple for me, I will jump over there on that. And actually, I do have something to share for the members. I just finished my 14.5 URGI, almost perfect clone M4 build. I finally got the Surefire suppressor, the 4-prong flash hider, the 4-prong pinned and welded on there, so it is all now legal. And I will be sharing that with you today. So members, look for that. Be a members only build. But that was a no compromise, the best of the best, an absolute go to war, 100% combat proven stuff. I'm super excited. Super excited. So after the stream this afternoon, I'll have that for members up. But yes, Overton, I would be happy to jump on over there and do that. Maybe if I can get my feet wet with that platform, I would love to do more of the airsoft content, as you put it, stuff that's just not going to be allowed on YouTube. We have to walk a really fine line over here, gentlemen. There were some people that should say, you need to go hard, you need to just speak truth to power, and just damn the consequences and take whatever comes. And I get that. I'm not a person that wants to pull a punch, capitulate, water things down, but also we have to be wise. You know, the good book told us to be harmless as doves and wise as serpents. So the content that we share on this channel, we have a big platform. I've dedicated, nearly 13, 14 years of my life to this. It's very important to me. We don't want to just throw everything away. I don't want to be an appeaser, don't want to be a compromiser, but I also don't want to be foolish. We want to be able to utilize this the best we can and to reach as many people as we can. If there are other platforms where we can have a little bit more liberty, share a bit of those things that we have in common, we get into our airsoft things and how to set up body armor and plate carriers and that sort of thing that is just not really welcome over here, I would love to do that. But I don't think it wise to burn it all down. I don't know if we want to die on that hill here. I don't know how productive that will be right when we're on the cusp of a great awakening. So it is a very difficult tightrope to walk on with people nipping at your heels, and we have to be careful, beloved. Be careful. Bold but careful. But thank you, Overton. Send me the invite. Let me know. Speaking of Overton, I will do a call with you tomorrow. I can't do it today. The rest of my day's all booked up, but to cover those topics. And we'll do that tomorrow morning before the stream. So put that together, and I'll be happy to do it. Our friend Jamie, welcome. Jamie's been with us for 2 months now. Jamie writes, what are your best work gloves to wear when it's warm out? Can't seem to find good durable pair to keep my hands cool. Gloves are not going to keep your hands cool. I don't know, I don't wear gloves too much anymore, near as much as I used to. when I worked construction, my hands were always really calloused. And that's one thing that maybe it's kind of an unspoken thing among men, but tell me if you don't feel this way. If you shake a man's hand, now I got to be careful here. I mean, it's so easy to be black and white. I always argue from my perspective, and I think the way that I was raised in a Christian cult where everything was so black and white, that's my paradigm. That's the way I see things. I'm trying to catch myself on that and understand that the body of men in this world, just because a dude is not a blue-collar guy, just because he doesn't out working on his motorcycle and do that sort of thing and have calloused hands, doesn't mean he's not a man. Let me preface that right off the bat. But he's also a man that I can't relate to near as well as someone that likes to sit here by the wood stove and talk dirt bikes and snap-on tools and welding, TIG versus MIG. That's the type of guy that I can relate to. That's the guy growing up into the trades. I never went to college. I'm self-educated. That's what I'm comfortable around. So that's my paradigm, and that's who I speak to. But when it comes to gloves, I quit wearing them because my hands were getting soft. I just don't do as much as I used to do. And I just always remember, and I still to this day, when I shake a man's hand, if I grab his hand and he has a firm grip and a calloused hand, it just puts me at ease. I kind of know my guy. I know that we're going to most likely have a lot in common. We're going to be able to talk tools. We're going to be able to talk construction. We're going to be able to talk engines and preferences. There's a lot to work with something like that. Whereas if I get a man that has very soft hands and gives you the cold fish or the dead fish, that's immediately a problem. And probably for me, I automatically somewhat distrust a person like this. And right or wrong, I don't know. It matters to me. So I will take every opportunity now that I'm doing less work and more sitting down and live streams and that sort of thing to make sure that I keep calluses on my hands. I would recommend against gloves for the summertime. The only reason that I wear gloves anymore is just to keep my hands cold or warm when it's really, really cold. Or if I'm working with stuff that's particularly nasty, barbed wire, doing fences, or you're doing blackberries or briars or anything like that. But I've never heard of the concept of wearing gloves to keep your hands cool before. That's just the opposite. You lose a lot of heat out of your hands, a lot of heat out of your neck, a lot of heat out of your head, and all that sort of thing. So the idea of wearing gloves when it's hot is unappealing to me. What do I like? Leather is always the best. It's hard to find really, really good gloves. The problems with gloves, as I've said in the past, is that manufacturers are always cutting corners with all these things. And what you want to look for is if you're looking for a decent pair of gloves, find out how they're stamped. The Wells and Lamont gloves, like Costco and all that, when you get those things and they get wet and they shrink up, the reason why they shrink up is because they wet that leather down, they stretch it tight, then they punch out the glove patterns, they sew them together, and it's holding in that stretched position. The moment it gets wet, it reverts back to what it's supposed to be, and then they shrink up and you can't get them on and you give them to your wife, right? So when you're looking for gloves, just consider that. But I'll tell you the gloves that I use. I found a pair that's pretty good that it does not shrink. And I can't remember the name, so I'm going to walk over here and grab a pair. But you can get these on Amazon. That's the only place I've found to buy them. But next to the Forest Service gloves, I think for Proho, they are the best way to go. Here they are. I found them. And this is what I do. What I would recommend, if you're working with gloves, I don't care if it's summertime or wintertime, you try it. There's so many new materials and there's so much salesmanship out there, and it's incredible how expensive gloves are getting. I mean, I hate to see mechanics. I know mechanics gloves are great to work with, and they're amazing. Just the sensitivity you can get. You can start bolts with them now, the different materials and all that. But goodness, I mean, when you pay $50, $60 for a pair of gloves that are going to last you a couple weeks. I don't know, man. I just can't do it anymore. And as good as they are, my favorite is the leather. These guys right here are about the best value I've come across. And when they get wet, they don't seem to shrink up nowhere near what the Wells and Lamont does. These are made by Black Stallion. Can you see, is that focusing? Black Stallion, you can put those on, I think they're on Amazon. You can buy like a 12-pack. They come out to about, when I was purchasing these, I bought a dozen or so. They were about $9 or $10 a pair. And you just can't, they can't beat that for a good glove. I think that they're stitched in the U.S., or they used to be. They have the pull ties across the back of the wrist, and that's really nice, especially if you are working in the dirt. When I used to wear gloves, like doing excavating and work, if you didn't have this tightening adjuster on the back of the hand, then all day long you're getting dirt and stuff inside your gloves. And all day long I'm doing this, I'm putting my hands, taking them off, shaking them out, getting all the rocks and the dirt clods out, and that helps a great deal. So what you do to your gloves, the best thing you can do, and I've got videos on this, is what we do with the wildland firefighting, is to grommet them. Grommet them. Gloves, it's hard to keep them together. We have a lot of gear and stuff we have to keep track of. So one thing that Pro should have, and you can get these for a little bit of nothing at your local hardware store, is just a little grommet set, brass grommets. Get the big ones, and you'll find all sorts of uses for this. Any sort of a fabric or anything that you want to be able to attach a carabiner or a zip tie or lock together is very useful to do. So that's how I do it. I grommet all my gloves so that I can hook them together, either on a pack on a carabiner or on a carabiner on a belt, so that you're not losing them. Gloves are important, especially in environments where you're working around stuff that's hot. But I don't know, I can't recommend really a summer or winter glove. There is no such thing as a waterproof glove. I don't recommend buying those super expensive ones. I have bought them and they never hold up. I've never found anything that works better than just an old school, medium weight, high grade leather glove. And if you want waterproof, then you get 6 pair. I mean, that's the way it is. That's the way we used to do it. When I was working excavating in winters in the Willamette Valley in Portland, one of the rainiest places in the world, I lived in rain gear for 6 months. Wet, cold, muddy, uncomfortable for years, all the time. Hands. Dealing with your hands was the hardest part. You needed the dexterity because I had to run machinery, had to do intricate stuff, drilling and tools and pipe fitting and gluing stuff together. And the only thing that worked for us was having about 3, 4, 6 pair of gloves, constantly rotating, leaving the engine running with the defroster on, keeping them blown out, and that was the solution. But this is what I use. This is what I use. This is what I like. We have a super chat from Mike. Hammerhand says he's willing to do chat live. Just reach out. Yeah, give him my email, Cody@Wranglerstar.com, and I'd be happy to talk with him. Hammerhand is a good dude. He's a wise individual and has a lot of good information for younger guys. It's important, man. I mean, the emphasis. One thing that we've gotten really backwards, and I'm not just saying this to be self-serving, but I'm just saying that this is the way we got wisdom and knowledge in the past, was from men that have been there and done that. Guys like Hammerhand, who have grown up working, a digger, working for a living. Guys like myself have grown up working for a living, working for other construction companies, working in all aspects of it, having my own business. We've experienced a lot of things. We've also made a lot of mistakes, and we've learned what works and what doesn't work. Everything that you're being told as a young man, and everyone, is that youth is king. That's the thing that we should all aspire for, that everything is about looking, being fit. And if you don't have youth and the fertility, that viralness, or what, the word escapes me here. But if you don't have that, when you start getting into the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it's time for you to move on and to make room for the next generation that actually has what people want, which is youth. Well, that's true. Those of us that are 50 and 60, we do look upon, especially when you have an 18-year-old son. As he left the house today, he's driving his car, and it's the whole world in front of him, and he's involved in all these interesting things and not a care in the world, it's hard not to look upon that with a little bit of envy. When you, like, I got to go and work in the trenches and fight the good fight over here. But with that being said, there's so much wisdom from us that are have been around that we can share it. We can share it, and we can save you guys so much aggravation. It absolutely breaks my heart. Just an example around here. It breaks my heart that we've got we have a local community store, and that's run by just a lovely woman, and she's very much open. It's kind of the center of the community. People go there and hang out. It would have been not unlike for local people, back in the old book, the old times, where the men would sit at the city gates waiting for people to come through for news of what was happening in the adjoining town and such. So what you have is a small group of retired men that are probably in their 60s and 70s that have worked in the forest industry, that have worked as mechanics, that have done all sorts of things. And that generation that is 70 and 80 now, the amount of knowledge that they have and the amount of experiences that they went through is far greater than anything people will probably experience ever again. The changes that they saw, and just they have so much to offer, and they gather together, and they're too old to work now. They're retired, but they're still physically able. They still have trucks, they still have chainsaws, and I noticed that these guys, whenever there's ever an opportunity to go help someone, if anyone would ever extend an invitation, it just is so important to them. Whether it be to go help someone that got stuck up in the snow that got a phone call down to the Forest Service station. Those guys are up there doing it. Helping young couples that come in to cut firewood, or helping people to fall dangerous trees. I see those guys out there. I see them pulling cars. I see them working all the time for the community. And what an asset to a young family, or to a young man that maybe he had an absent father or no father in the house, or the father didn't teach him anything, or he was raised by a feminist mother. To have to go, and let's say he gets that message, and he scrapes a little cash together and is able to buy a small piece of land, and he's trying to build a house. He's got to learn all that stuff from scratch. And it's a steep learning curve. It's very unforgiving. And the cost of everything is getting greater and greater, and the regulations are getting more and more difficult, and every roadblock is put in front of him to prevent him from succeeding. If there was a way to get to shift and put an emphasis on the importance of these men that have got all this experience, if there was a way to put together these two groups, man, what we could accomplish would be just incredible. And the amount of effort that could be, mistakes that could, oh goodness, I just don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. I can see now why. You can start to see now why the powers that be have put so much work into separating men, or breaking down the ability of men to communicate and get together and to talk and have these discussions and to build these communities. We have a super chat from Spencer Hayden. Shout out to you, Spencer. Welcome. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Thoughts on preparing versus paying off debt. I have a few pew-pews and a week's supply for hurricanes. The debt, you got to get the debt dealt with. The debt, I'll tell you our personal story. It was heartbreaking when I realized the bad situation that I'd got myself into. When Mrs. W and I realized I was completely ignorant of all this, the movement and the lies that we were told growing up, and chivalry and how, all these things that we're starting to become aware of. When I first started to wake up to this, and it dawned on us, we got to get out of this environment. We need to be in a place where we can be self-sufficient, where we can grow our own food. I saw this a long time ago, and I'm not going to take credit for this. It was the Almighty brought this to my attention by bringing people into my life that had actually been doing it much longer, that saw it way before I saw it. We're not up here to brag about being early adopters, or I saw it before you did, and look how smart I am. That's got nothing to do with it whatsoever. I'm actually quite late to this. I saw people that had been 20, 30 years, that saw it 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that had been doing it, and I felt like I was a little bit late to the game, and that was almost 20 years ago. I was really anxious about these things, asking myself the same question: should I pay off debt? I don't have any preparation. Should I put things on the credit card? Would it be better to have them on hand and work on the debt and such? When Mrs. W and I, when we woke up, basically lifted up our eyes and started to see the world for what it was for the first time, we took a look at our finances. We had that same question. And what really crushed both of us, is that when I looked at it, we were over $100,000 in debt. And we didn't have anything to show for it. We were making good money, I had my dream shop, I had a 5,000-foot dream shop that I'd built with a loading dock and a wash bay with oil separators. I mean, anything I wanted to do in that shop, I could do anything. I could have multiple car projects on it. It was amazing. Wood stove, the whole deal. Bathroom, commercial kitchen, had a dishwashers. Commercial dishwasher, so if I had things that needed to be washed, I'm not out in the gravel like a Philistine, shade tree. I had it in a commercial. I mean, it was really, really nice. I was living large over there and really enjoying life. Didn't realize the predicament that I was in, didn't realize how perilous everything was. And when we made the decision to step away from all of this and to go to a country way of living, we first thing that we did is we sat down and, where are we at financially? If we want to buy a piece of property, we're going to need to have money, and how much money do we have? And we were just playing fast and loose, paycheck to paycheck. Well, when I realized there's $150,000 in debt or so, something at or near, I mean, that was so depressing to me. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe, like, how did that happen? And it wasn't like I went out and bought something cool. I didn't like have a offshore boat or a race car or something cool that I could account for. It was just little things. It was just wasteful things. It was being irresponsible. It was eating out all the time, having too many toys, having too many clothes, just being fast and loose, just knowing, oh yeah, it's going to come in, no problem, as long as I can cover the payments, no debt, no problem. But that was horrible. It was almost so big, I thought, well, there's no way. There's no way we can ever get over this, and everything that I wanted to do, it's just not going to happen. Student loans, some of those were well, no student loans, old medical bills, dental bills, just things you're making payments on. I got to give credit to Mrs. W. She came up with a plan that changed everything, and it was a simple plan, but it gave me a purpose, and that's what I need. I mean, I need a purpose. If I can get a purpose that I can get behind and believe in, I will get so focused on it. Imagine if you've seen the intensity of what's the dog that the Navy SEALs use? Those really intense. Is it a Malamute or I don't remember the name of it. The ones that they jump with. Those dogs are intense, right? I can get to that level of intenseness if I can focus on one thing, like, okay, this is what we're doing, this needs to happen, and I have no peace and no rest until I get that done. I'm like a Rottweiler that gets or a pit bull that bites onto something and you can't get him loose. That's the way I'm made. That's the way that I do. I was moping, feeling sorry for myself. Oh, there's just no hope. And I would look at the number again, like, oh, $100,000. I mean, it's hopeless, hopeless. Mrs. W said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put the debts on the poster. And I'll credit Dave Ramsey for this. She got the idea from him, the debt poster, the debt snowball. And think what you may of him. That suggestion right there changed our life. So what she did, she listed all of our debts from the smallest to the greatest. And the smallest were like $500 for an outstanding dental bill. $2,800 here for a minor medical procedure, what have you. $12,000 here on a credit card, $14,000 here on a car note, whatever. Doesn't make any difference. What she did, she made a great big poster, drew out all the lines, and she put all of our debts in red from the smallest to the biggest. And she said, we decided this is what we're going to do. We're going to start knocking these things out. And we're not eating out. We're not buying clothes. We're eating out of our pantry. We're not going on vacation. We are paying this off because this is a barrier to us being able to do what we want to do. And that clicked with me. And not only the best thing that she did is she hung that thing up opposite our bed, right on the door, right on the wall, so that when her and I were before bed, we sit and looking on our computer like most people, we would look at that poster and we would talk about it. And every conversation was about that poster, and everything that we did and every decision that we made was focused, both of us, two people in a godly marriage, husband and wife, pulling together in harness for a common goal. When you have that, then that's a very powerful combination. You get traction quickly. So I started thinking about that poster. And my only goal in life was that first number. It was like $500 or $600. How do I get that paid off? How do I get that paid off? How do I get that done? I'm not looking at the big ones, which are just too demoralizing. They're so big that I don't even know. But I do know I can deal with that $500 on dealing with that old dental bill. And so I was thinking about it. Well, I look around my shop. What can I sell on eBay? What can I sell? I had this, I had that. I started listing stuff on eBay. I started listing stuff on Craigslist. It'd be Facebook Marketplace at this time. We started having sales and where could we cut corners? And what about the food? We used to go out, eat out a lot. We loved to eat out, and we'd spend, a couple $100 a week doing that. Well, what if we took that money and instead of eating out, we eat at home and we apply that? And then when we knocked out that first bill, I'll never forget it. She crossed it out and she wrote in red, in green. The debts were in red, and the paid off portion was in green. And I watched that balance go down, and that was it, man. And that's all we did. It took us a year or so of just grinding and focusing on that and sacrificing and not having fun and not doing vacations. And then then we got 50,000 knocked off, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that, once we did that and got that monkey off of our back, and we were debt free apart from our mortgage, and I would separate the mortgage from your personal debts. That will be tackled, but deal with the credit cards, the car notes, that sort of thing. But, as Dave Ramsey, as he says, you need to be, the intensity that you need to have regarding getting yourself out from under the slavery of debt needs to be the intensity that a gazelle has when he's being chased by a tiger or a cheetah or a lion, right? That's intense. And that's the intensity that we directed at that. And we're able to knock that massive amount out as quickly as possible. So if you were to ask me, what should be, Spence asked me what he should do. Should you hold this personal debt and go get the things that you need, or buy a couple thousand rounds of ammunition or night vision or whatever you need? I would recommend getting out from underneath of that debt. Because the thing that you're not seeing, you may run the numbers on it, and you may see, okay, we can maintain and carry this debt and maintain the minimum payments and still have enough to get the things that we need. What you're not counting into it is just the constant stress that puts upon you thinking about it. The constant stress knowing that you're dragging around a student debt loan 2 decades after you took it out. I mean, does that affect your quality of life? And you don't want to face it. I get that. It's easy just to make the minimum payments and to kind of pretend like it's not there. But you're only fooling you're not fooling anyone. You're not even fooling yourself. That constant pressure and that concern that is hanging over your head, it drags you down. It takes away, it attacks your spirit, it attacks just your quality of life, and it needs to be gotten rid of as quick as possible, in my opinion. There's a freedom that comes from that day that you can put that last cross on that debt snowball poster that I can't even put into words. A hope, an optimism for the future when you've dug yourself out from underneath that debt. And when you realize that you've done it, then you know you can do it again. So that's what I would recommend. There's a few things a dude needs to have, right? I mean, if you don't have the ability to protect your home, would I put that on a credit card? I might. If we're talking about foundational things, if you don't have a reliable car and you're counting on a job to help you to pay off this debt, maybe you need to have a car. But if you're driving a brand new car and your wife's driving a brand new car and you've got notes on it, both of them, are you going to be able to get ahead? Are you going to be able to attack that snowball? You might have to sacrifice like we did. You might have to go down to one car. You might have to sell that brand new truck that you love at a loss just to cut the bleeding and to humble yourself and drive a hoopty for the next 18, 24, 36 months. It's up to you. It depends on how much you want to sacrifice. If you're going to be gazelle intense in killing this debt, that might mean 2 jobs. That might mean the time that you're spending enjoying a beer with your feet kicked up at 6 o'clock after a day's work. That might mean delivering pizzas or doing Uber, whatever. Gazelle intense is doing whatever you have to do to get what you want. And what you want is to be free from the debt of slavery, or the debt of slavery is debt. Yeah, whatever, you know what I mean. I went to public school here, don't judge me. But shout out to Spence for being aware of that. Yeah, you got it. You can do it. Just have the basics in place, but the bare minimum, and start selling. Start slashing and burning and looking at the numbers. You got to sit down and put it on paper. And you got to get your wife on board, or your girlfriend, or whatever your situation is. Lord bless the ones that are not married and attached. This whole thing is a whole lot easier. If you're thinking about getting involved with a woman, I'll tell you, one of the very first questions you should have is how much student debt load, how much personal debt are you carrying? That needs to be, before you go anywhere, that needs to be understood. We have a super chat from Mr. Mason. Mr. Mason's been with us for 2 months. He says, Mr. Mason, I just got my first moto. He got a Husqvarna TC125 two-stroke. Shout out to you. We're all about two-stroke Husqvarna motos here. It's not street legal, but I figured I should learn to ride proficiently before hitting the streets. Can't wait for all the moto content this summer. Yes. Now, here's a common mistake. I'm not saying you made a mistake, but here's a common mistake among first-time motorcycle buyers with small CC bikes regarding two-stroke. It's natural to think, if you're looking at bikes, if you're a brand new person and you look, okay, there's 120, there's 50s, 80s, 125s, 250s, and 300. Stands to reason, as a new rider, that I would buy a smaller bike. Well, the same thing happens with sailboats. I'm not a sailboat expert, but I got into it for a while. I used to have a Hobie catamaran. My dad lived on a houseboat, so I did a lot of sailing down there. But when I first got into it, I thought, well, I need to learn how to sail a boat, and not being a person that was really into looking for, well, I usually tried to figure things out on my own. Found out from someone that you could rent sailboats down at the marina on the Columbia River. And with no experience, no knowledge, I went down there and talked to the guy, and indeed he rented sailboats, and he had anything from like a 23 Hunter up to 50, 40, 48, 50 foot bigger boats. And when I looked at that, I thought, well, of course, as a new buyer, a new sailor, then the smaller one will be the easiest to operate, right? Well, not so. I found out later that actually the smaller boats are quite difficult to operate. And I got myself into all sorts of trouble in the channel, and a few run-ins with some of the barge traffic before I finally got things figured out. Fortunately, I had an outboard motor on it that I could pull the sheet down and motor into safety. But the same thing with the motorcycles. I'm not saying you made a mistake. I don't know your size, stature, all that sort of thing. But those smaller bikes have to be ridden, because they lack power, they have to be ridden on the top of the engine, on the power band. So it's on or off with those little bikes, and they can be somewhat intimidating. So just be aware of that. A 125 on the street can be a handful, especially if you're a bigger guy. But in the future, if you're looking at your very first bike, sometimes the bigger bikes are better. Yes, they ultimately have more power. That can get you into trouble, but they also can save you in the difficult spots. Like when you go in and you got the wrong gear, or you're cross a creek and you've got to get up this bump or you're going to fall back into the water, those big bikes having that extra power on the low end to carry you through the difficult times where you didn't shift right or you're not riding the bike properly can save you a lot. Whereas the 125, if you're not actively riding that thing and up on that pipe and really know what you're doing, you can get into trouble. So nothing you can't handle, but just be aware of it. If you're a smaller guy, lighter weight, younger, then that's an appropriate bike because the seat height's lower. But shout out to you, man. Now you should also, one of the joys of motorcycling, I'll tell you that I divide motorcycles in the whole experience into 3 categories. And I don't enjoy one category any more than the other. The 3 things that I love about it equally are, number 1 is to be able to work on it and to tinker on it and having something that's so simple. It should be your goal. And I encourage you guys, if you're suffering from depression and you just feel hopeless because you're alone and you don't feel like you can meet other dudes that have things in common and you don't have a tribe and you don't have a culture because it's all been stripped away from you, one turnkey culture that is out there that is full of really good dudes is motorcycles, especially off-road motorcycles. There's pretentious, you get into your Ducati guys. I mean, you can run into ham radio type of guys on some of these. You got to avoid those. But when you're getting into just good dudes that like to do trail riding and enduro and off-road, I just cannot think of a better pastime for a guy. It is true freedom. If you have never been on a motorcycle or never owned one, to be able to cut out from all of the cares of the world, from the stress of your family for a couple hours, to meet up with a couple of buddies and go ride the canyons or go do a trail ride or go tackle a difficult hill climb. It's one of the greatest things in the world. It establishes a tribe. It puts the world into perspective. It gives you the ability to keep yourself fit, to test your courage, which we all want to do. How do we stack up against other men? And other men will help you to elevate you. Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Here's a perfect example, and I'm not saying this to gloat at all, because other members of our group do this routinely. This is just an example of what happened yesterday. It's important as a man to test yourself, to do something every day that maybe doesn't put you in jeopardy, but scares you a little bit. Just to remember that you are a man, that remember what you're capable of, that you're not just a useless lump that's designed to be in middle management sitting in a cubicle all day, to get out and experience the world. We were working on some new roads that are still snowed in, and we're fighting through the snow, and that can be difficult and such. And we got to one particular spot where it was deep and we didn't want to cross it. And we're both looking at it. There's 3 of us. We're looking at it as a group, and everyone's kind of waiting for one person to break, to say, oh, yeah, that doesn't look like a good idea, so that we could be off the hook, so we don't have to do this. It was a stream crossing. It was a river crossing. That's what it was. We're sitting up, and river crossings are difficult and scary on dirt bikes. And we're looking at it, and we're all feeling it. No one's saying anything, and we're waiting for the first guy to talk, and it was me. I got up, I spoke up, and I said, well, we're a long ways from home, and it's starting to rain, and it wouldn't make sense to, what if we fell in and got wet, and then we'd have to ride back with wet boots, or worse, all wet, go under the water, and that just doesn't make sense. And then here comes the choir, of my buddies. Yeah, that makes sense. It wouldn't make sense, guy could catch hypothermia out here. You get a sniffle, I'm embellishing, but that's where we were going. I started my bike. I'm going to whip around, do a 180. We're going to go back. We're not going to do the stream crossing. And the Holy Spirit, for lack of a better word, speaks to me and just tells me, you need to cross that creek. I started the bike and just made the decision. Like the moment that came into my head, I'd already resolved to leave. I didn't want to cross the creek. I absolutely didn't want to. I didn't want to fall in and get wet or get hurt or break something or not be able to get home. But the moment that came into my mind, whatever that may have came from, God's Spirit, my own personal, who knows what, I started that bike. I went across the creek. And we all have headsets on, right? So we're talking to each other. And it was not a big deal. It was not a big one. It was just one of those marginal ones. Cross the creek, right to the other side, right through the snow. I hear, well, I guess we're going, right? So the next guy, he crosses the creek, and then my buddy Brian, the last guy, says, well, he goes, I'll be damned if I'm the only one that's not getting across this creek and staying over here. And he crossed the creek, and off we rode, and we did things. Now, this is not a boast or a brag. This is just an example of why it's important to be around fellow like-minded men, because we push each other. We lift one another up to do greater things and to do more courageous things that we would do if we were just on our own. And one of the worst things you can do is to be always around women, because women are risk averse. Do you think, had you been with your wife or girlfriend, if she would have pushed you to do that, would she have would she do something to elevate you in that situation? And I'm not disparaging women. We're made differently. Men are not risk averse. Women are, for various reasons. They're made. They're made the way that they are. But I'm telling you, if you find yourself around the presence only of women, and that could just be your girlfriend or wife, because you can't find other dudes like-minded, you are neutering yourself. You're neutering yourself. You've got to get yourself in a position where you're around like-minded men, where you can learn from each other. Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. The perfect example, just like that motorcycle ride. I think for us right now, that is a great outlet. And if you've never done it before, I would encourage you to do it. It's affordable. Don't get caught up with going and buying something fancy or new. You for $3,000-$4,000, you can get a good used Japanese motorcycle. Make sure it's enduroed so you can ride street and off street. And what you will find is, if you put yourself out there and you go to the local trails and you start working on learning how to do this, you're going to meet dudes. You're going to meet guys out there, and don't be shy about it. Whenever I meet a guy in town and I look at his bike, I can look at his bike and see just the way he set it up and what components he chose and what model he chose. I can see if he's my type of guy, if he's doing and riding the type of things that I like to ride. And I see that from time to time, and I will always put myself out there, walk up there and just say, hey, I see you've got this bike. I see you've got this two-stroke 300. Well, I've got a two-stroke 300 as well. And right there we have something in common that we're both passionate about. He's passionate about it. Obviously, he's taken his time off. He's loaded the thing up in the pickup. He's went to the trouble to accessorize it a certain way, or spend his resources on tubeless, skid plates, pipe, the right tires, whatever. You know that you already have a ton in common, and you know that you're probably doing the same thing. So you've got your a tribe member right there, turnkey, ready to go. Go up to him. Hey, I've got a 300 as well. Talk about his. I liked what you did here, this and that. Hey, I've got a group of guys. We ride up here on the weekends. We keep we're all on chats. We got a chat together, and we put the call out. Hey, we'll meet at my place at 10 o'clock. We're going to be riding until 2. Let me have your number. Put your number in my phone and include them on that. And pretty soon, you'll start building a tribe. You start building a group. You'll find guys that might end up becoming really good friends and important to you in the future. There's that aspect of it. That's the third of the 3 things I love about this sport. That's the 1/3 of it is the camaraderie. The camaraderie with like-minded individuals, the camaraderie with my friends. The ability to put ourselves in a difficult, adverse situation. And I create these. You have to create adversity. Our wives, I think sometimes when we go out and they see us like all morning, we're out here like a bunch of children, getting ready to go on this great expedition, go out playing on motorcycles. We're mapping it out. This is what we have a goal. We're going to try to get so many miles. We're going to try to get up to the top of this mountain where we didn't think it was possible. We're going to try to find a new way around and cross this river and then come around here and then do all of this. And everyone's on the same page. Everyone's invested. And it is a group of men working to achieve a common goal. And when we don't have the buffalo to hunt anymore, when we don't have a war to go fight, when we don't have the saber-toothed tiger to band together and to go destroy, then that neuters us. We're made that way. We're made to thrive under adversity. We're made to thrive in the presence of other men. We thrive in our testing of masculinity with other men. This is a huge, huge problem that's been stripped away from us here in the West. And this is the best way that I've found to reconnect. The other third of the thing that I enjoy is the technical side of it, the mechanical side of it. Motorcycles are relatively easy to work with. And one thing about motorcycle dudes is they're very generous with their time, especially on YouTube. There's a ton of creators that are going to have tutorials to do anything you need to do. How to change a tire, no problem. How to break a chain, no problem. How to replace a piston on the top end on your 250 two-stroke, no problem. It's all there. And you don't have to make a huge investment in tools, but that side of it you'll learn to enjoy as well. There's something that is beyond pleasurable when you are on a machine that you understand every aspect of it, that you've had your hands on every single bolt, that you've taken it apart 1,000 times, that you know intimately how it works. I used to hear Harley guys, how they got attached to their motorcycles, how important they were, almost like children. I thought it weird. Excuse me. But I understand it now, especially when you get time on that machine. My 300 is a 2018. I bought it in 2017. It's probably the best maintained 300 among in the country, and I know it intimately. I love that bike so much I've named it. I've named it Candy because I enjoy it more than candy. As silly as that may sound, the joy and satisfaction of being on that machine when it's running properly and just feeling the vibration and understanding how the piston works and understanding when the chain is out of adjustment or too loose and knowing everything about it is a great, I enjoy it so much. I enjoy coming back and working on it and learning every aspect of it. So that's the other third of it, the technical side of it. And the knowledge that you'll glean from that, if you're not mechanical, if you never had an auto shop to learn from, or your dad didn't teach you how to change oil, the benefit that you'll receive from just learning able to work on your own motorcycle will pay huge dividends. Just your basic understanding of how small engines work. Once you change the oil on your motorcycle and understand the relationship between spark and fuel and how to adjust a carburetor and such, it's limitless where you can go with that. Now you'll be able to fix your lawnmower. Now you'll be able to understand how an engine works on your rototiller. And there's just a great many things. You'll understand how to plug a tire, how to fix a flat tire. And now, once you do that, now you know how to fix a flat tire and repair a tube or do a plug on your passenger car. There's a lot to this. It's very important, and I think it's where it's at. And the last thing is the riding itself. Challenging yourself. The riding itself is not really the end goal. Mrs. W laughs at me, and I told her I probably spend, for every hour I ride, I probably have 2 or 3 hours of just fussing around with the bike, cleaning it, working on it, taking care of it, understanding it, setting up suspension, all those things. That's just as fun to me. So I don't, I just don't look at it. A lot of guys that will come through here, it's a burden. Like they wait till the last moment. Oh, I got to drop the oil on my bike, and I got to change a tire, and that all they focus on is just the ride. But there's more to it than that. I think if I had to pick my favorite part of it, it's the camaraderie. It's the type of dudes, the quality of dudes that you meet in that environment. I would encourage it, beloved. If you haven't done it, I would start looking. Get on Facebook Marketplace, sell something, get rid of something, do what you have to. If you can get 4 or 5 grand together, get yourself a good dual sport bike, and let the adventure begin. Big fan. And when you live in a place where you can ride right from your house, that's really the creme de la creme. We have a super chat from Perk who writes, how and where do I see your Geisley build? I will, it's members only. I will post up the next episode for members. So if you'd like to see that, then join a membership, and I'll get the next episode up this week. I'm sorry, I've been a little bit derelict on that. Also, Park, I will be sharing I have 2 builds going on. I just finished the no compromise military grade super skookum build, the 14.5 for myself, and then the other ones are the same, but at a better price point. But those are only for members. But we may be doing them on Rumble, so we'll see what Overton comes up with. Brian, our friend Brian M. is back. Good to see you, Brian. Welcome. Brian's been with us for a year now. He writes, can you share the tips or tricks for transitioning to be an early riser outside of go to bed early? I know that's part of it. How to transition? Are you not an early riser? Man, I've always been an early riser, not because I wanted to be, but because I was institutionalized from a young age. Public school, get up early, wait for the bus, stand in line, you know the whole drill. All of that conditioning us to be good little robots until we can be plugged into the machine, and they can harvest. They can basically farm our lives for their wealth. I mean, I grew up with that, so I don't know any other way. My granddad was the type of guy, you know, he would say, that the sun would never catch him in bed. You know, that was the mentality of the greatest generation. You know what? I don't know that I can share any tricks or things like that. What I've learned is that if you want something to happen in your life and you want it to stick, you know, rather than it's a very feminine thing to resort to a simple solution, because women by and large are lazy. Not all. Mrs. W, my wife, is not lazy. I know most of my friends' wives are definitely not lazy, but most of them, a good portion of them are. That's why they're looking for quick fixes. Diet pills, if I could just find the right diet. I don't want to go to the gym. I'm just going to get a BBL instead. Clothing, all that. Looking for things to fix that, or a simple solution for things. What Proho needs to do is you need to look at yourself and like, bro, I've got a problem. I'm getting up at 8, 9. You know, by the time I get up and around and shower, the day's half gone. I'm not motivated. I feel bad because I slept in, and now I'm staying up gaming until 3. You know, and the cycle repeats itself. You know, you just got to resolve. It's like, you know what? I don't like the situation I'm in. I don't like the environment that I'm in. And the only way that I'm going to change this is if I resolve to make things happen. So just decide to do it and do it. Figure out why. Why are you getting up early? There's got to be a point, a reason for it. Is it for a different job? Is it because you want to get a few things done? Maybe you want to get your shop organized before work, and it's the only time you have because you're too tired when you get home. Whatever it may be. Maybe you want to get up early and have some time for worship. Maybe you're not working out. Whatever that may be, just decide what it is that you're trying to accomplish, why you want to do this, and just do it. Just do it. Like, you're a man, you're not a child anymore. No one's going to hold your hand. No one's going to give you a quick fix or a pill or a mind trick that's going to cause you to do it. Just do it. Decide what it is that you want and do it. Resolve. It's called resolve. Turn your face like a flint. Let nothing distract you. This is my focus. I'm a man. I do what I say I'm going to do, and this is what I'm going to do. That's all you need to do, man. There's no tricks. We have a super chat from Unknown. He says, hello, Mr. Wranglerstar, 24-year-old working direct care and going to school. Any advice on what I should do for a profession, and how to handle money? School is fine and all. I get all of that. You know, here's the advice that I'm just going to give you the advice that my wife and I are giving to our own son. He's 18. We held him back. We homeschooled him. He's still homeschooled. He's never been to public school, but he's making these decisions now. We're looking at different colleges, and exploring what our options are and what's out there. And Mrs. W and I have been to many, many campuses with him. We want to see what's going on. If I'm paying for a portion of this, I'm not going to pay to send my children to an indoctrination factory. I'm not going to pay my hard-earned money to fund an education to professors or an organization that is opposed to my belief system or going to try to turn my children from the way that I raised them. So there's that. We're basically, what advice we're giving to Jack, he's his own man, of course. Once he's out of the house, he'll make his own decision. If he decides to take student loans to get a English literature degree, he'll do that. It's out of my control, and I'm not going to criticize him for it. But I'm in a position now, when he's under my roof, that I'm still advising him. Mrs. W is still advising him. If you're not going into the hard sciences, if you're not going into you want to be a structural engineer or a doctor or that sort of thing, and you want to go there and just find yourself, or hopefully something inspires you when you get there, and you're taking student loans and you're $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year just to go and find yourself in college, then you need to not do that at all. That's a foolish idea. You understand that this student debt loan is not forgivable. That will hang on you. That stink will be on you your entire life until you pay it off, accruing interest. I mean, it is absolutely one of the worst decisions that you can make. Now, I understand you're working as you're going, so that's good. Maybe you're on scholarships. Maybe you're not doing student loans. If that's the case, and if you can fund it yourself, and you want to go get a degree in English literature, and you're not coming out the back end with $80,000, $100,000 in student loans, then that's what you do, man. I wouldn't tell you otherwise. But if you're not going into something that you can actually use, where there are gatekeeping, obviously you want to be an architect, you want to have the authority to be able to sign off on projects, there are gatekeepers. That's the way the system is set up. You're not going to be able to do that unless you have been given authority by the state. You want to practice law, you've got to pass the bar. You've got to jump through these hoops. There are gatekeepers. They've done this on purpose so that they can control the population, that they can have an inner ring, an inner circle that you're not part of. This has all been done by design. That's fine. If you want to play in that space, that is the price to get in, and you do what you have to do. I wouldn't be opposed to it at all. Be careful with the student loans. It's going to suck, but you're going to probably have to work as you go along, unless you have someone that's willing to pay for this for you. But for the rest of us, for just regular Proho, I would not. It's not necessary. Why would you put yourself in that environment? You're going to have to sit through insufferable professors. You're going to have to sit through diversity training. You're going to have to go in there knowing that you are a second-class citizen and that you are the problem. I mean, why would you interject yourself into that situation? I mean, if you are very resolved from a young man, sometimes you meet dudes that they just know what they want to do. And they know it from the beginning, and they can go into that environment, and they can put their head down, realize that it's stacked against them, realize that it's trash, but there's something at the other end that they need, and then they can go out and hang a shingle and do what they want to do. That's one thing. But to go blindly into this, just because your boomer parents told you to do it, is foolishness. The trades, beloved, the trades, more than ever, are where it's at. The skilled trades. This is the tip of the iceberg. Dude, I just it was Easter. Ran into a friend of mine down the road. It was kind of a community get-together, and he's in the same position. He's got a young man in the family about Jack's age, and is faced with the same question, college versus whatever. He just landed himself, just to give you an idea of what type of incentives are out there for good quality dudes that are willing to get into the trades, skilled work. This this young man that's about, I'm guessing he's probably 18 or 19, just got involved with an internship with a major company that does diesel engines. And they're paying him while he goes to school, really tier 1 school. They gave him a stipend, I think it was $20,000 to get set up with his initial toolbox and such, which is not a lot, but it's not nothing. It sounds like to our Harbor Freight crowd, that sounds like they're thinking to themselves right now, the damage you could do at Harbor Freight with 20 grand, right? Not only that, but it's a 2-year program, so he's working, making $35 an hour as an apprentice. They're paying for his school. They're giving him all sorts of stipends and incentives for tools. They're giving him very interesting work. I was told that one of the first jobs that they had, they attached him with a tugboat crew. And that the job was to replace one of the massive diesel engines in this giant tugboat. And what they did, a little side note, but it's interesting, is they disassembled the engine down in the well, took the heads off, the intake, all of that, and brought it up through the smokestack. That's the way they replace engines, those giant diesel engines in this particular boat. And he was part of that. That's a great education. What a great experience. That's something you talk about your whole life. Remember that time where we disassembled a giant diesel, a big Cummins engine, and we took it out the smokestack of a tugboat, and the new engine went back in the same way? And then all these incentives and all these tools, he gets to keep all of this at the end of it if he gives them 2 years. So he's getting a first-rate education on how to be a really good diesel mechanic. He's getting real-world training. He's getting $35 an hour as an apprentice. He's getting a tool stipend, travel, etc. He's looking at, this guy told me, when he comes out of this program, he's looking at an income that's minimum of between $125,000 and $200,000, and it'll be 20. No student debt loan. Would you like to start life in that position? Yeah. So the trades, beloved, the trades are where it's at. His goal is he wants a service truck. He realizes that if he can put in 5, 6, 7 years, depending on the aptitude of a guy, but if you've done something for 3, 4, 5 years, you're probably proficient to do it on your own. And he realizes what he wants to do is, he's like-minded like us. He gets in there, 5 years, gets his education, and then he gets his own service truck. Now he's running calling his own shots. Now he's got the potential of making $250 a year being self-employed. Picking the jobs, doing what he wants, rejecting what he doesn't want. His own man. Freedom. As free as we can be in this country. That's happening right now, right down the road. That's actually taking place. So those opportunities are out there. How much better is he going to be at the end of 5 years with all of those skills, certified diesel mechanic, his own tools, all paid for? I mean, would you rather be in that position, or would you like to be just coming out of a university with a BS degree that is not even usable? Let's say it could be very possible because of the advance of technology that the position that you wanted to get into may not even exist halfway through school. And now you're switching gears, and who knows? It could be difficult, it could be a disaster where the diesel side of it, or a lineman, or a journeyman pipe fitter, or a welder, those things are going to be there. Those are all, and they're going to be of more value. The guys that are really good at that are absolutely killing it right now in those trades. Do you remember, just to put a point on, what time is it? I don't want to be late for my appointment. I'm going to have to, 2:30, I'm out of here. Do you remember the big snowstorm that they had over this year? It was over in New York somewhere, unprecedented. There was a snowstorm there, and then there was one just recently in the Sierras where folks were stranded. The roads were not being plowed. The same thing happened over in New York. Snow plows not getting it done, people trapped in their houses. We all saw the news and all of that. and everyone's like, oh, the government is letting us down. The government, we're paying all these taxes. Taxes go up all the time, and we can't even get basic services. What's going on over there? Is it grift? Is it incompetence? Why? This is not the first storm we've had, and always in the past, we could always count on the guys out with the snow plows and the guys up on the power poles and in the bucket trucks making things happen, and everything worked fine, right? Why is it not happening now? Well, it's simple. American men are checking out. The generation that was the generation of service, like my generation, the guys that would, they put in a couple extras overtime because they knew it was important to get the chains on all the snow equipment so that the street could get plowed out. The guys that were attached to the community, they had something to fight for. Yeah, they lived there. Yeah, I might be even, how many times have you given your own time because something was important, even if you weren't getting paid for it, because you knew there was a greater good, that what you were doing was helping or benefiting the society, that you as the role as a man, as a capable individual, as one of the members of the society that actually keeps the whole country together and running, that there was an obligation to the country, to the United States, to your community, whatever that may be. To varying levels, some guy more than others, but there's always been guys dedicated to that cause. You see it all the time around here with the snowplow drivers, the bucket truck drivers, whatever it took. That's the way America has always been. It's not incompetence or intentional, I think, by the leaders that the reason why these services are breaking down. It's that the dudes are gone. Yeah. So the infrastructure is all there. Let's say for the snowplow guys, all the machine sheds are there. The giant piles of gravel are all there to gravel the road. The chemicals are all loaded up. You've got the graders, you've got the dump trucks, you've got the sand spreaders. Everything is the infrastructure is all there. It's all been paid for. It's worked out. The protocols, the way we do it, nothing's changed. So why are the services diminished? Well, it's all about the men. The men that have walked away because of frustration, walked away because they didn't want to be forced to take experimental medication, and so they were fired, or they were treated so badly that they said, never again will I ever lift a finger for this country, et cetera, et cetera. But those positions still need to be filled, right? So who's filling them? Not the good men, not the capable men that have always done it. These men, I'll put myself in this group, are turning away from these jobs. They're turning away from a society, a government, a community that doesn't appreciate the effort and the work and the sacrifice that we have always done to keep this country running. We're turning away from that. But the positions are still there, and they need to be filled. So who are they filling with? They're filling them with people from out of the country, filling them with minorities, filling them with women that don't have the experience and the understanding, filling them with just ne'er-do-wells and just incompetent buffoons, paying them the same wages and expecting the same result. But what we're starting to see, and this is the breakdown that we're seeing, when we see the breakdown in these services, it's not necessarily, I don't know that it's necessarily intentional. I think it's just a direct result of men walking away, the men that keep this country going. And this is some of the first manifestations that you're seeing, that when the pressure is put on, and the pressure can be put on a community when you have a major event like that, hurricane, snowstorm, something unprecedented, where in the past, good, strong, working American men stood up to do what needed to be done. Now they're not doing it. And now everyone's looking around. What happened? Where did all the good men go? Well, the good men are checking out because they're tired of being not being appreciated. They're tired of being disrespected and maligned and labeled as the reason why we have all these troubles, when it was us that actually kept all of these people in comfort and the ability to enjoy the lifestyle that they do. And expect to see more of it. Expect to see more of it. Just personally, for me, I would have been that guy that would have traveled to any state in the country, even to volunteer to help a community put out a fire. When the government made the call, all hands come here, We need type 2 crews. We need guys with experience to come do this, even though it's out of state, even though it's not my community. Maybe it's California, maybe it's Montana. I have done that many times. For years I did that. Would do that today. Would bring in and offer my expertise. Would even do it at my own cost if it was needed. Do you think I would do that now? Do you think that I would lift a finger to help the federal government or the Forest Service put out a fire that didn't affect my local community? I would not. And I'm not alone in this. There's many things that you would have done in the past that you would not be willing to do now, because if you're not being respected, if you're not being thanked appropriately for the sacrifices that you're making for the people that are undeserving of your time, efforts, and labors, then we're not going to do it. We're not going to go where we're not appreciated. Now, I will move heaven and earth. I will apply every resource and ability that I have to protect my community and neighbors from a wildland fire that may be encroaching or threatening the valley at any cost. But that's very different. That's internal. That's my own family. And that's what's changing, is that people are circling the wagons, and we're going to start taking care of our own. And if you're out there, so sorry, but you're going to have to deal with that situation on your own. So expect to see more and more. And those people that are on the margins and that have benefited from the hard labors of us who have kept this country running are waking up to that fact now, that there's not going to be, these heroes are not going to be coming to save them anymore. And I do look at men that dedicate their time and put their lives and bodies at risk for dangerous jobs, whether that be drilling oil or at 10 below in a bucket truck, up bringing power back online. I do see them as heroes, because I know how difficult that work is. And there's a very small select group of men that have the ability and the desire to do that. And once they check out, then hardships are going to come for a great many. We have a super chat, or member message from S. Cooper. Shout out to S. Cooper. S. Cooper writes, well, he's been with us for 2 months. Let's not forget that. He writes, been here for over 8 years. What a journey. You have a tremendous impact on me. Thank you for everything. You make us feel like we are all friends. And we are. You know, we're not friends, but we're like-minded. And the important thing here for us here is to know, I want you guys to know that you're not alone in this way of thinking. You're going to be a minority. People are not going to see, even maybe family members are not going to see things the way that you see them. Everything that you see and everything in the media and all the pressure is going to be to try to convince you that you're wrong, that you're crazy, that you need to accept the trannies, that you need to accept the global homo, that you need to get with the times, and that you're an outdated man with outdated ideas. That is not true. You have drawn a line in the sand, and if you haven't, you need to. And you need to resolve with yourself how far you're willing to go. Are you willing to mask up again? Are you willing to be forcibly vaccinated? Are you whatever that may be? Are you willing? Well, you fill in the line. Mr. Christian Dunbar, our newest member. Welcome. Welcome, Christian. Driving O Red, super chat, no message, just a thank you. Thank you very much. We sure appreciate your support. Goodness, it means so much to us here. As we move more and more to the truth, the more attack and the more exposure is going to be brought to the channel. We will get to the point, it's inevitable, that we will require, the only way that we will be able to be here and to continue with this message is by you guys supporting us. And that's the way it'll be. Once we reach that, we will have freedom. And then we can say what we want to say. Thank you. Mr. Ted Smith, super chat and 1-year member. Welcome, Mr. Smith. Good to see you back. Ted writes, checked out your TikTok the other day and saw that you're getting 1 million views on almost every video you post. The way you've adapted has been awesome to watch. Love the content, man. Keep it. Yeah, adapting is where it's at. The first comment this morning in the chat, when I schedule the live chat, the comment section comes up. It's empty, but some dudes jump in there and start chatting back and forth. The first comment was somebody lamenting the fact, I remember back when you used to do things that were, that were cool things. You used to show us how to do things. You used to show us how to make tools and sharpen axes and that sort of thing. Lamenting the fact that we've lost all of that. Gentlemen, I challenge you to do something. I know there are some of you that you can put your hand to the plow of one particular thing and just do that for 40, 50 years. My granddad, bless him, the greatest man I ever knew, he was that guy. He was a mechanic, and he was content with that, to be a mechanic. I think it unreasonable that we would, 13 years down the road, 13 years putting content on this site, that we, after 13 years, still be doing sharpening axes. You know, we've done that. I have hundreds of videos on it. I enjoy it. I enjoyed learning it. I enjoyed getting mastery of it, having it the point where I could do it without thinking and do it right. That was a feather in my cap. That was something that I wanted to achieve. I did. I wanted to learn how to file crosscut saws. I wanted to become proficient at filing big timber. But once you gain a proficiency and an understanding and know how it works, and it's no longer a mystery to you, how can the thinking man be content with that? You move on to something else. You're always improving. You're always learning. And the idea that a man could sharpen axes for 13 years on a site like this and not evolve and move on. I mean, we're covering it over a decade of a person's life that I've shared with you. I've shared with you the raising of my children. I've shared with you my struggles. I've shared with you multiple properties. We've been in this together for a long, long time. And has the world changed? Has it not changed a lot in these last 10, 13 years? And has the algorithm and has the desire for what people want to see and what is featured, has that changed? Yes, we could be with 60,000 subscribers doing axe videos coming up on 15 years with the same small group showing up just because they're just accustomed to doing it. You know, but I can't work that way. I can't run a channel that way. Do you think I could continue to do this, get up every day and go through all this, just going through the motions? No, we were responding to our environment here. We learned how to homestead together. I brought you in. I brought you guys in when I was up on the side of a mountain, Mrs. W and I logging, the two of us in the snow. I brought you in when we spent a winter with an infant son wheel in an off-grid location with no power, struggling and suffering up there. I brought you through losing the entire property and all of the difficulties and struggles we went through in 2008. I brought you into getting a brand new rundown homestead and building it up into something that was completely independent with an orchard and well, all of these things I've shared with you as they have happened. You know, I'm in my mid-50s now. The world has changed. My role has changed. My calling has changed. We have gained a lot of information and experience doing this and going through these difficulties. I went through them. I did it physically, personally. I was there doing it. I was there cutting the trees down. I was doing the timber framing. I shared that with you. Now we're moving into a different space. We have a whole new generation coming up that needs to be encouraged, that needs not necessarily to be taught what to do, because that information is always there. When I was uploading that content on YouTube 10 years ago, it didn't exist. How to snare a rabbit, how to make a tent stake, how to do basic bushcrafting, how to start a fire, that stuff was not on the site. There was a good reason to do that. So to come in and to ask me, I want you to do another axe handle video when there's 5 million of them and I've done 500 myself, it's not beneficial. While we have young people that are sitting in despair with no hope, thinking that they're alone, thinking that they're crazy, thinking about deleting themselves. There's bigger fish to fry here. That information is there. If you want it, if you want to learn how to do it, I've done it. You can watch past catalog, but there's different, the time is different here. My role is different here. This is what we're doing now. To be relevant, to be promoted on the site, you have to move with the algorithm. They don't want long-form content. I'm not going to do long-form content if it's not going to be shared. I'm not going to do long-form content if it gets 16,000 views. I can do a 60-second TikTok video that gets 4 million views. And we're reaching people. You know, all of this stuff, all of these short videos that we put out there, these are fishing hooks. These are multiple fishing rods out on multiple platforms to bring people in that don't even know what they're searching for, that don't even know about this message, that don't understand the plight of young men and think that they're alone, that there's something wrong with them. If that brings them here and they can be part of this community and they can learn this message, they can learn that they're not alone, then that's what we're doing here. This is a much bigger picture than what we started. And you don't see it. Many of you are not privy to this because you're not seeing the personal messages. You're not seeing the flood, the literal flood of personal messages that I open up to in the morning about how this is affecting lives, how this has motivated a man to get up off the couch, to get out of the basement, and to get something going. It's a constant stream, and it's building, it's growing. It's a tidal wave that's building. That's what we're doing here right now. God has given me a mandate to go forward with this message, to be unapologetic regarding our faith and the gospel and the importance of having putting God first in your life and family second. You know, this is important what we're doing here. If it's not your cup of tea, if it's not what you like and you're harking back to the old days, there's other content. But we're moving beyond that, you know. We are on the absolute cutting edge of the cultural war right here. And there is a war going on. A lot of people saw it way before I did. I am late to this game. I will be the first one to admit it. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. But once you hear truth, you know, a truth has a certain ring to it, and you're compelled to speak it. I have about 4 more minutes, beloved. I cannot be late for my appointment. Goodness, I'm never going to get through these super chats. What I'm going to do, if I don't get to your super chat, friends, I'll ask Overton if he could leave these up here, and we will lead with them in the morning, tomorrow morning, Lord willing. I'll get to every one of them, but I may not get to them today. We have a super chat from 44 Inco who writes, "Do you stream with Undead Chronic or Hammerhead?" I have not. I don't know them. I've watched both of their content. I probably started watching it maybe 2 years ago, maybe the summer before last, I think. Yeah, but I watch most of their stuff. You know, they're doing the same work that I'm doing here. You know, different motivations, different perspectives. But they were early adopters, earlier than I was. We have a super chat from Dom Beeps. Dom's been with us for 2 months. Welcome. Thank you. It's a very generous super chat. I sure appreciate that. Pro renter aspiring, am here, 30 years old, finished paying off my student loans. Now my wife and I are debt free. We have about 25% of the cost of our homestead saved. Man, crushing. And the cost of should we save up to buy in cash or get a mortgage? I'm not a financial advisor. I can only tell you how much risk I would be willing to take on with this. I understand wanting to get it, and I understand that it's unlikely if you pick the right spot. You know, some people will tell you, wait, we're going to go into a housing bubble. It's happening right now. We haven't felt the full effects of it, but look to 2008 on steroids. You know, that's basically word on the street. And I do agree to a certain extent, especially in a lot of commercial real estate. Malls, you know, people don't have money. People don't have the money to buy the stuff that they had, and all of these expensive retail outlets, this life of consumerism is rapidly coming to an end. And so these things I would be leery about them. These are going to come down in prices. Also, where they built massive amounts of houses, especially people that were kind of scared about the COVID thing and they wanted to move to states that were a little bit more friendly politically to their feeling or their outlook on life, who came from an urban area realized that, oh, winter is difficult in these places. Oh, I don't even have a tractor. Oh, no one's going to plow my road. So there's a lot of that going on as well. So some of these places that were extremely overinflated, some places in Montana, some places in Idaho, I would be careful about, that's my timer. But if you're choosing country properties that have good growing seasons, that have good like-minded communities, that have wells and the things that you need to be self-reliant, I do not see them coming down in value, but only increasing in value. Because as things get more and more difficult, as the cities get more and more run down and more dangerous, there's going to be a lot more pressure upon these properties. And there's going to be more people that want to find them. So knowing this, and if you think you have a place like that, it might behoove you. And if I had 25% of it, I personally would probably take a mortgage on the other 75, under the condition that it was a 10-year note. It would be my goal that I'm not going to string this out for 30. This is going to be a 10-year deal. I can't tell you what to do. I'm not going to advise you financially. But if it were me, and if I was comfortable that the thing wasn't going to be really a lot cheaper, the place I wanted to buy within 18 months or so, if I could get into it, I would get into it. Provided that you've done your due diligence and you have a way figured out that you can make an income and keep money coming in. If your idea is just to get in there and we'll just coast on savings and hopefully I can get something going or a local job, don't do that. Just count the costs. Have a plan. What are you going to do? Yeah, if you're like, yeah, I've got a service truck or I've got a small business that will work there, I'll get plugged into the system, we'll be able to do it, then fine. I would be comfortable with it. We have, it's Overton, he saved me. Yeah, he knows I'm going to go on here and make myself late for my appointment, and he just pulled all his super chats, and so I can't even see him. So sometimes you need a minder, and I certainly do need a minder. So that's it. Well, thank you, beloved. I sure do appreciate that. I'm sorry to cut things short. We're just getting rolling, getting all fired up here. I will be here tomorrow, same time, Lord willing. I'll have to cut this short, but don't forget, this coming Wednesday, today's Monday, this coming Wednesday will be day 2 of our fast, of Proho that is fasting with this. And the common, I guess, the common thing that we're working towards, that when we're getting serious about being serious about our prayers, is we are looking for wisdom and insight, especially those of us as fathers that have children. Insight and wisdom as to make the best decisions in life. So you choose what it is that you are working towards, but prepare yourself mentally for that. It's coming up. Eat well tomorrow, have a good supper, get plenty of sleep, lots of water, and then Wednesday morning, I will be participating with you in the 24 hours of fast. This will be the second week in a row, and we'll do this for 4 weeks. So we'll do this for 4 times. So I invite you to do that. So just a little bit a warning and a heads up. Members, I will have content for you. I will be sharing with you the completed URGI 14.5 M4 build, which I'm very proud of. It is a near perfect clone of the current military version that's being fielded. I like that sort of thing. May God bless you and your families. Please keep us in your prayers. We will be praying for you constantly. If you have questions, I do ask, keep them to a limit, but if you have something that you want to offer to the community, whatever that may be, Cody@Wranglerstar.com. Give me patience. I work through those as fast as I can, and we'll see about that. So, members content, I'm following up on the radio. We're working over here for you. Working. May God bless you. Keep us in your prayers. We'll see you all on the next video.